Give me that water, I need to fight it. Okay, I can't get it like you.
Welcome to the Counterculture Podcast. Our podcast was created to help young adults hear a different perspective on relevant topics in today's culture. So hang out with us as we look at the world through God's Word.
Give me that water, I need to fight it. Okay, I can't get it like you.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome
What's
back
going on, guys? Welcome back
to the No, okay, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll get it.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Counterculture Podcast. First thing you're thinking, obviously, is, whoa, what's going on with this setup? Well, I'll have you know that last night we were supposed to shoot a podcast episode. Mitch forgot his charger.
Nope.
So we
Nope.
couldn't shoot, is what happened.
Nope.
But then I told him in a very lovingly way, bro, I think our podcast setup sucks. I think it's ugly. And I think we need to do better. And he said, I disagree. I then continued to prove him wrong as I developed a setup in my kitchen, which is, yes, where we are right now, my kitchen. And basically, he was enamored. He was absolutely stoked after I showed him my idea. And here we are in my kitchen with the setup that I recommended. So do you have anything to add to that, Mitch? Any part of the story you would reword?
There's a good percentage of that I would reword. However, let us know in the comments what you think of the new setup, how it looks. Obviously, you can only tell if you're on YouTube. So Spotify listeners, Apple Music listeners, come on over.
Come on over,
Or
baby.
come over to our socials. You'll see us there too.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, seriously though, we want to continue to level up the quality of our production. We want to offer you something that has value, but it's also aesthetically pleasing. You want to actually feel like you want to watch, and I didn't feel like I wanted to watch my own content sometimes, and I was like, that's kind of problematic. So this fits a lot more of my vibe and my aesthetic of what I like to be in, what I like to consume. So I feel a lot better about this. Tell us, Mitch, about the topic today. What are we going to be hitting?
Yeah, so this is going to be a quicker episode. We're going to glide through some stuff. There's been a lot going on, to be honest, in the world in general. You know, there's a bunch of stuff politically that's been happening with Trump and his speech with Congress, his talk with Zelensky. I'm sure you guys all have heard a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And the Oscars just happened. Specifically, we're going to focus on something that was like just stood out at the Oscars more than usual, which is hard to say.
Yeah. It's crazy.
We're going to be talking about, if you guys missed it, there is a movie. I'm not even going to name it.
Don't name it. I don't remember the name,
Yeah.
but don't name it.
Because I think it's just worthless. It's complete trash. And basically it's a movie about prostitution, and it follows this prostitute who falls in love with the guy who comes in to meet her, you know.
Wow.
And so it's kind of like a humorous drama rom-com type thing.
Yeah.
But it won quite a few awards at the Oscars. And so not only is that kind of something noteworthy that of a film about prostitution and, you know, maybe, okay, it won some awards. But then the director and the main actress made their Oscar speech. And we're going to react to the clip of that as they honor and glorify the sex industry and the sex worker community.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see this one. Let's dive right in, bro.
All right.
Let's pull it up.
I also just want to again recognize and honor the sex worker community. I will continue to support and be an ally. All of the incredible people, the women that I've had the privilege of meeting from that community has been one of the highlights of this entire incredible experience.
The beautiful and breathtaking work.
Wow. I need to digest that
It's
for a
beautiful
second.
and it's breathtaking.
Yeah.
Of course, we haven't seen this movie,
No, and I won't.
but from what I heard, like, pretty X-rated.
You know, I guess what I struggle with when it comes to things like this is, at what point does that line get blurred to where, honestly, like, even just breaking it down to the base level of morality, like, at what point are we just not like, hey, us as a civilized, species who have evolved over, thousands of years, where we've gone from the Stone Ages all the way to, the modern ages of where we exist right now. And yet somehow there is a part of our civilization that still somehow doesn't understand the detriment not only of this industry, of the things that take place in this industry, but the evil. Like, I think that what we don't realize is that the devil has his hand all over this. Like this, like, dude, this is his playground. And what he's doing is he's giving people a false sense of validation, a false sense of purpose, a false sense, hear this out, of love, bro. Like, these people want to be loved. We all, as humans, we want to be loved. But the sad part is the way that they're experiencing love is so twisted and distorted from what God's intention of love was supposed to be. And so I think, to me, what is ultra terrifying is, like, you guys are so blind to what is literally just right in front of you. Like, the evil, the damage, the detriment of all of that's going on in this industry. And so to basically go on stage and say that I stand with that is diabolical. Yeah. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
It's definitely alarming. Like I said, even for the Oscars standard. And I think, to your point, a lot of it, just the debauchery in culture, in that, celebrity culture specifically, whether it be the music industry or the film Hollywood industry. A lot of sinful behaviors and sentiments are just kind of glossed over, and they're numb to it.
Yeah.
But
what do you think like she is actually standing with? I guess that's a question I have for you. Like, when she says, I stand with the sex workers in that community, like, what is she standing for?
Well, I think there's a pervasive notion right now. I mean, it's been growing, and I've heard it before.
Yeah.
But, like, the sex worker industry should be dignified, because we want to dignify women, and it's their choice.
Right.
And if we dignify this, we're dignifying women's choice to be whatever they want and do whatever they want with their bodies. So it's kind of like a natural extension of maybe the abortion argument, even.
Yeah.
The pro-choice side.
Just like things. The freedom to do what you want with your body and your life.
Yeah.
Which I get. And the thing about it is, I understand that, but I think we can't neglect the very real, the tangible, the quantitative ramifications of this industry. Right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you look at, like, the transition of, what used to be something that you had to go to a creepy store on the corner of your town, right, to obtain. And then now it's like just, fingertips, literally just a click of a button when it comes to pornography and all of that stuff. I think what's so interesting is we can literally see the detriment. I mean, there's scientific studies showing brain analyzed, whatever those are called, CAT scans of cocaine addicts, heroin addicts, and porn addicts, and their brain chemistry, their structure looks similar. So it's like, we can't act ignorant and act like this is just a completely harmless thing and it only affects them. That's my whole thing, is like, if this was something that it's like, hey, you want to go ahead and do this on your own, that's totally fine. But it's the whole drunk driver thing, right? It's like, but once it gets out of hand, it starts to affect other people. It has literal damaging ramifications in other people's lives. And that's what I just can't get past. I mean, her little brother's sitting in the audience. Like, has he seen the movie?
Yeah, I didn't think about that when you said that.
Right? Like has he seen that?
Shouting out her little brother, like, dang, this is something that you're hoping that your family sees.
And then you ask the question, like, okay, so do you want your little brother to grow up, and do you want him to be in that industry, working with sex workers, doing all of those things, taking women just as objects and, objectifying? I just don't even understand how that's feminism. Like, I don't even understand how, like, that is literally the most degrading thing for a woman. Like, to me, feminism is putting women in places where they are able to use the gifts God has given them and be loved and be cherished for the ways that they provide for the household and manage the household. Like, what an honor that is. You know what I mean? Discipling children. Like, what? Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think it's especially, well, I mean, a lot of these people or these women in sex work, whether it be prostitution or dancers, what
Yeah.
have you,
Yeah.
it's just so tightly intermingled with like trafficking.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Right.
so I really do view a lot of these women as victims.
For sure. For sure.
Because it's just, like I said, very closely tied with trafficking. I'm not sure what percentage, but prostitution, that's where trafficking thrives.
Well, I can tell you this. There's a really interesting statistic. If you haven't seen the movie, there's some mixed reviews on it. Nefarious is a movie that is Christian-based, and I think is executed very well. But I'll spare the premise of the movie. Essentially, at one point, there is a advocate for the progress and the success of our current society. And the other person that is starring in the movie is basically saying, like, our world is in shambles. Like, what you think as far as, success and progress and reform is really just, it's a mirage. And so one of the things he's talked about is, he was like, man, we've never been more free. We abolished slavery, this and that. And the guy's like, we've abolished slavery? He's like, we've never been more free. He said, did you know that currently in the world, we have more slaves existing than we ever have in the history of society? And over 40 million of them are sex slaves. More slaves than we've ever had in our entire history. And so we think that we're making progress in these ways, but what the devil is doing is he's taking our focus and he's putting it on something else while he's working in the background, distorting our perception of reality. And so when we think things are going good, we think reform is happening. He's actually just plotting on the back end in the dark places, in the secret hidden places.
Yeah.
And we don't even notice it, but we just are so fixated on the big, bright, shiny object that's to our left that we don't even see what's going on in the dark. And that's what's crazy about getting on stage and idolizing these sex workers. And it's like a lot of them don't want to be there. So there's another interesting thing that came out recent. I don't know how recent, actually, I should say. But there's this lady who is a very, very big advocate for the for abolishing Pornhub. Absolutely love her movement. I can't remember her name. But one of the things that she talked about was there was a time when basically there were, I want to say millions. I could be off base there, and I don't want to mislead with data, but there were tons and tons of girls who had their literal rape videos posted publicly on Pornhub. Like it was just a public video. You could just go click and watch. And at one point, there was so many lawsuits going around with Pornhub that they just purged millions of videos.
Yeah, I saw this episode.
You saw this? Yeah, super interesting. And so it's like to think about that. Like that's what you're promoting. It's like so many people's story is really a story of being a victim of the industry, getting into something that they thought was one thing and it turning out to be something else, committing suicide because they wanted to feel loved and accepted by somebody, and the community that accepted them really only wanted to objectify them and make money off them. So we think that all of these portrayals of porn, the industry, sex working, stripping, dance clubs, like we think all of that is like the luxurious lifestyle. Everyone's depressed in there. Everyone is lonely.
Yeah.
No one's happy. But we want to put on the mirage that they are, so that we consume, and it's a multi-billion dollar, it's probably $1 trillion industry. It's a $1 billion industry though. So,
For sure.
got to keep the economy going.
Yeah, and even if we're not even talking about the women who are forced into it or who are victims.
Yeah.
Even if these women are choosing to do it, and like we discussed, the cast of this movie and many in the room at this Oscars event think that it is dignifying women to honor these communities of women and this role.
Yeah.
Even if they are choosing it, I mean, just think about what they're doing practically.
The nature of it is crazy.
What is more degrading to a woman than having a woman rent her body out to different men so they can fulfill their sexual desires?
Yeah.
Like that, I can't think of a more degrading
No.
thing to do to your body to choose to do with your body.
No.
So it's like, okay, even if you think that it's your choice and you can do whatever you want, why are we celebrating?
So
that?
why do we stay in that cycle?
Again, it's a kind of a psychosis of a mindset that you
Yeah.
can put yourself in
Yeah.
when that's all you know, that's who you know, that's your
Mhm.
environment. And especially with a culture that is okay with putting that in movies
Yeah.
and glorifying it in movies and in social media. Like
Mhm.
it's I would love to see like 30 40 years from now,
Yeah.
like how perspectives change and like,
Well,
you know what I mean?
and I think, what's interesting is the devil works in such crafty ways. The devil just wants a foothold.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the devil doesn't want to take everything by storm. It's like he's so crafty in the ways that he takes over our society, our brains. And so what I think is really interesting, like kind of, pairing with what you were just saying, is like we look at, you do wonder, like, what does 50 years look like from now? But I think 50 years ago, I don't think we would have expected this reality, but at the same time, it wasn't dramatic. It was a slow fade. You know what I mean? Like, it was all of a sudden, this is okay. And then the standard for PG-13 just got lower and lower and lower.
Yeah.
And then this was okay on social media, or this wasn't okay. Now it is. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think we've just continually numbed ourselves, and it's like a slow exposure thing, right? And we've just became used to it. And that's how the devil is kind of planning and plotting against us. Is he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna give it to you in doses, right? Because if I give you too much, you're gonna overdose, right? There's gonna be a bad, harsh reaction. But if I feed these poisons to you, if I feed them in small enough doses, you're not even gonna know the dosage is increasing, but you're just gonna get more and more sick.
Mm-hmm.
And the devil is feeding us poison, and we're very, very sick as a society. And we're not going to stop consuming it because it's what continues to move the gears of the economy and ultimately the fleshly desires of society.
I absolutely agree, dude. I don't think we'll ever. It's just moments like this, usually every year at the Grammys or the Oscars, that we can kind of see a realization point of, all right, this is being propped up, this is being endorsed and celebrated.
Yeah.
So it sucks and it's tragic, and it's even more tragic that people don't realize that it's tragic.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think, as Christians, and we can end with this, there's a story that I just heard actually at youth group. It's a clip. It's called, if you ever want to look it up, Matt Chandler, Jesus Wants the Rose. And it's very, very powerful. I'll make a long story short. Essentially, this pastor, he's right out of college, I believe, and he meets this girl, and she's like a single mom. I think she's like currently sleeping with a guy who's married, and he's like trying to be a witness to her, bring her to church, invite her to things, and they get invited to some event. And so they go to this event, and the guy basically at the beginning of the message passes out a rose. And I think this was at a university, but he passes out a rose, and he told them to just pass it around. And by the end of the sermon, he gets the rose, and he's basically just shaming them, being like, look at this rose. Who would want this, right? Like talking about how the value of somebody who's been, ran through by multiple partners, right, has been in sin, living, vicariously in their sin, like how that degrades their value, and like who would want that? And Matt Chandler basically just is talking about how he's sitting there in his chair, and he is furious because he's like, Jesus wants the rose. Like Jesus wants the rose, whether it's beaten, whether it's tattered, whether it's pulled apart. And so, I think the idea here is, regardless of the mistakes you've made, regardless of the industry you're from, and Joshua's a great example, regardless of what you've done in your life, Jesus wants you as you are. Jesus wants to take you as you are, and he's going to make the change happen in your life, right? You don't have to change to come to Jesus. Jesus changes you. And for so many people who feel stuck in their sin, right? You don't have to be a sex worker. You don't have to be, right, a porn star. But if you feel stuck in sin, if you feel like, man, I feel like I am not good enough to come to Jesus, it's like, that's why Jesus came down to us. It's because we weren't good enough to get to him. And so he had to be the atoning sacrifice, the mediator. And now that he came down, we have that opportunity to know love, to know forgiveness in a way that the world can't offer. And so I think that's my message to those who are listening right now. Like, whatever that looks like in your life, whether it's a sin you're holding on to, whether it's you feel disqualified for Jesus' love, just know that the things you feel like disqualify you are the exact things that qualify you for his forgiveness.
Absolutely, dude. I think that we're going to end it on that.
Let's do it.
Guys, thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't, check out our Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Thank you to everyone who's listening and watching. Share this podcast with everyone you know. It really helps us out.
Appreciate that.
The song in the intro was mine, and it's out now. Check out my music and check out
Uncertified.co. Most recent release just came out. I promise you don't want to miss it.
episode 20 wrapped. We'll see you in the next one.
See you next one. Peace.